ceremony tonight. I would like to thank you all for coming out this evening to support Bishop Miage's forensics team. There's been a lot of success throughout this season, and it's been a wonderful time for us all. There's been many awards that have been given to all of the competitors. Tonight, we are going to be seeing many people who have gone above and beyond this year with their abilities on this team. Overall, through the season, we have had 3 state festival qualifiers, 21 state championship qualifications, and 5 national qualifications that we are going to be competing this June. So, for our first performance tonight, we are going to have Katie Taylor performing her prose.
In the world, crawling in a field at the edge of some stupid town, with a name like Shoshone or Medicine Bow, is an ant. You weren't aware of it. If I hadn't mentioned it, you would have continued on with your life, pinballing from one tedious task to the next, waiting for electronic bits to zoom through the air and let you know that someone was thinking about you. Whether you knew about it or not, that ant is out there right now doing ant things while you wait for the next text message to prove that out of the 7 billion self-centered people on this planet, you are important. Consider your life for a moment. Think about all those little rituals that sustain you throughout your day, from the moment you wake up until the last lonely midnight hour when you guzzle a gallon of NyQuil to drown out the persistent voice in your head. Think about the absurdity of brushing your teeth, of arguing with your mother over the appropriateness of what you're wearing to school that day, of homework, of grade point averages, and boyfriends, and hot school lunches, and life. Think about the absurdity of life. Life isn't fair. If life were fair, the smartest among us would be the wealthiest and most popular. If life were fair, teachers would make millions and scientists would be rock stars. If life were fair, we don't gather around the TV to hear about the latest discovery coming out of CERN, rather than to find out which Kardashian is pregnant. If life were fair, then Jesse Franklin wouldn't have killed himself. Your entire existence is predicated upon this belief that you matter, that you matter to the universe. But you don't. Because we are the ants. There are moments in all of our lives in which we are reminded how truly fickle our mortality is. Something teenager Henry Denton is quick to learn in the aftermath of his boyfriend's devastating suicide. Overwhelmed by both guilt and grief, Henry is forced to learn how to stand on his own again, all the while in the face of incredible adversity. From Sean David Hutchinson, this is We Are the Ants. It's been 268 days since I got the phone call from Mrs. Franklin telling me Jesse was gone. I met him freshman year. I knew who he was. Everyone knew who Jesse Franklin was. It wasn't that he was popular, but he just had this way of dominating a room. No matter how many people were there, you couldn't help noticing Jesse. Of course, he talked to me first. I never would have had the courage to approach him. It was during lunch. I was sat alone reading, and he walked up to my table, all smiles and perfect hair, and asked if my name was Daniel. I told him it wasn't, but he insisted I looked like this kid Daniel he'd known from summer camp. Finally, he just asked my name. Only it wasn't just Jesse standing there. It felt like every kid in the cafeteria was at the end of my table asking, and I've never done well under pressure, so when I opened my mouth to answer, the only thing I could say was, I don't know. I was sure I'd blown my only chance to get to know him, but I ran into him at the mall a few weeks later. Actually, he found out my name from one of his friends, and when he saw me with my mom shopping for shoes, he chased after me, yelling my name. Mom thought he was a lunatic. My entire life revolved around Jesse, but in the end, it didn't matter. He slipped a noose around his neck and hanged himself without even saying goodbye. No note, no text, no less voicemail. The last thing he said to me was that he thought I needed a haircut, like it was just any other day, only it wasn't just any other day. It was the day before he committed suicide. If everything is supposed to matter, wouldn't Jesse have said something more meaningful? Wouldn't he wanted to do more than hang out and watch TV like we always did? Wouldn't he have at least left a note explaining why he felt he had to die, instead of leaving me here alone asking why? Right? Why is Jesse dead? Why am I not? Sometimes I hate him, but mostly I just miss him. It took a lot of time to realize that Jesse's suicide wasn't my fault. It took a lot of therapy for me to get that Jesse committed suicide because he was sick. That Jesse didn't die of a broken heart. He just died of a broken brain. Depression isn't a war you win, it's a battle every day, and Jesse got worn down and didn't think he could fight anymore. And I wish more than anything that I could point to you one specific reason that made him give up. But I can't. Sometimes people just quit wanting to live, and there's no good reason for it. We can only live with it. I mean, I'll die, you'll die, but we'll all die, and the things we've done, the choices we've made will amount to nothing. And it doesn't matter. Because the universe may forget us, but it can't forget us until we're gone and we're still here, our future's unwritten. We can choose to sit and wait for the end, or we can live right now. We can march to the edge of the void and scream in defiance, yell out for all to hear that we do matter, that we're here living our absurd lives, and nothing can take that away from us. We don't get to choose how we die, but we can at least choose how we live. Because we are the ants, and we'll keep marching on.
disruption. But as I was saying, our next performer is going to be David Lottewasser with his 5th place prose at state.
I got up, went over the window, and looked out. The monster stood in my yard, looking right back at me. Open up. I want to talk to you. Yeah, sure, because that's what monsters always want, to talk. I do not often come walking forward. Only for matters of life and death. I expect to be listened to. So what do you want with me? At last, to the matter at hand, the reason I have come walking. I will come to you again on further nights, Conroe Valley, and I will tell you 3 stories. 3 tales from when I walked before. And when I have finished my 3, you will tell me a 4. I'm no good at stories. You will tell me a 4. And it will not just be any story. It will be the truth. It will be your truth. Ever since Connor O'Malley's mother was diagnosed with cancer, everything has been falling apart. His father left them for dreams in LA. Everyone at school sees him as a freak. And his grandmother, who he's staying with, is controlling and encumbers the creative spirit that his mother taught him to embrace. Connor's only solace has been in a giant tree monster that promised to heal him. Connor only feels that he can be healed if his mother is healed, as the cancer that slowly kills her day by day is also killing him. The 3 stories that the monster promised have been told, and it is time for the 4th tale. It is time for the truth of Connor O'Malley. This is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I got up, and then I saw the church, the hill, the graveyard. Everything was gone. Even the sun had disappeared, leaving us in the cold darkness, the same one that had followed me ever since Mom was first hospitalized. I recognized the ground under my feet, recognized the clearing I was in, bordered on 3 sides by a dark, impenetrable forest. On the 4th side, a cliff, flying off into even further blackness. And on the cliff's edge was Mom. Mom, run, please, you have to get out of here!
I'm fine, darling. Don't worry about me.
I pulled myself forward some more, but she was too far to reach in time, and I felt so heavy. The next thing I knew, there was a low rumbling sound from beneath the ground. A rumbling, booming noise, like something big was moving down below, something bigger than the world. It was too late. The real monster was here. At last I could run. I broke across the clearing, running so fast I nearly toppled over. I threw myself towards her outstretched hands as the dark fist pulled her over, and I caught her. But this was the nightmare. This was the nightmare that woke me up screaming every night. This was it happening here, now. The nightmare monster gave a roar, pulled harder, its fist straining around her body. She began to slip. She was so heavy, impossibly so. And here is the 4th tale. Here is the truth of Connor O'Malley. She was screaming and she was slipping. It was so hard to hold on to her. It is now or never. You must speak the truth. And the truth came all of a sudden. As the nightmare reached its most perfect moment, she fell. This was the part when I usually woke up from the nightmare. But I didn't wake up this time. The tale is not told yet. This is just a nightmare. This isn't the truth. It is the truth. You know it is. You let her go. She fell. I couldn't hold on to her anymore. She got so heavy. You must tell the truth. And you must tell it now, or you will never leave this nightmare. You will be trapped here alone for the rest of your life. Please let me go. I tried to back away, but when I turned around, I saw that the nightmare's tendrils had returned. They had wrapped themselves around my legs, constricting me. Speak the truth, or stay here forever. I had always known. The truth, the real truth, the truth from my nightmare. Tears were tumbling down my face, and I couldn't stop them. Couldn't even wipe them away because the nightmare's tendrils had taken me over completely. They had bound me. You let her go. You could have held on for longer, but you let the nightmare take her. You loosened your grip. I nodded. Tears tumbled down my face, and my face scrunched with pain and weeping. You wanted her to fall. You wanted her to go. No! You must speak the truth, and you must speak it now, Connor O'Malley. I shook my head again, but I could feel a burning in my chest. Like a fire someone had lit there, a miniature sun blazing away from within me, eating me from the inside. It will kill me if I do. It will kill you if you do not. You let her go. Why? The fire in my chest suddenly blazed. Suddenly burned like it would eat me alive. It was the truth. I knew it was the truth. A moan started in my throat, a moan that rose into a cry, and then a loud, wordless yell. I can't stand it anymore! I can't stand knowing that she'll go. I just want it to be over. I want it to be finished. The fire surrounding me ate the world. It wiped away everything. Wiped me away with it. At last, it was the punishment I deserved. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the hill outside my house. Why didn't they kill me? I deserved the worst. I've been thinking it for the longest time. I've known forever she wasn't going to make it, almost from the beginning. She told me she was getting better because that's what I wanted to hear, and I believed her. Except I didn't. I started to think how much I just wanted it to be over. How much I just wanted to stop having to think about it. How I couldn't stand the waiting anymore. I couldn't stand how alone it made me feel. And a part of you wished it would just end, even if it meant losing her. That's when the nightmares began. The nightmares that always ended with, I let her go. I could have held on longer, but I let her go. And that is the truth. But I didn't mean it, though. I didn't mean to let her go, and now it's for real. Now she's going to die, and it's all my fault. And that is not the truth at all. Thank you.
That was absolutely wonderful. Our next performer is going to be Sawyer Schutz, performing a prose.
Mr. Reynolds!
No. Johnny, you here. You cannot be up here.
But where should I find this?
Did you check her room?
Yeah.
She looked really, really hard. Like really, really hard. Why don't you go look extra super duper hard?
That's not really.
Sawyer Schutz, performing a prose.
Six months after moving to Paris, I gave up on French school and decided to take the easy way out. After all I ever said was, "Could you repeat that?" And for what? I rarely understood things the second time around, and when I did, it was usually something banal. The speaker was wondering how I felt about toast, or telling me that the store would close in 20 minutes. All that work for something that I really didn't care about, so I began saying, decor. It pretty much translates to, I am in agreement. It just pretty much basically means okay. But the word was a magic key, and every time I opened that door, I felt the thrill of possibility. I said "decor" to a waiter and received a pig's nose standing erect on a tender bed of greens. I said it to the woman in the department store and walked away drenched in cologne. Every day was an adventure. As humans, we're often plagued with embarrassing moments of miscommunication. Unfortunately, we ourselves are often to blame because we don't listen or we refuse to ask for help. However, sometimes the language itself is at fault, and the French language will never be the same after David Sedaris's When You're Engulfed in Flames. When I got a kidney stone, I took the metro to a hospital and said "decor" to a cheerful red-headed nurse, who led me to a private room and hooked me up to a Demerol drip. This was undoubtedly the best thing that decor had ever gotten me, but it was also followed by the worst. After the stone had passed, I spoke to the doctor, and he told me to return the following Monday where we would do whatever it was I agreed to. Decor. On the day of my appointment, I returned to the hospital where I signed the register and was led by a slightly less cheerful nurse to a large dressing room. "Strip to your underwear," she told me. "Decor?" And as the woman turned to leave, she said something else, and looking back, I really should have asked her to repeat it, to draw a picture of that's what it took, because once you took your pants off, the decor just wasn't okay anymore. There were 3 doors in the dressing room, and after removing my clothes, I put my ear to each one, trying to determine which one was the safest. I chose the third and entered a brightly colored painted waiting room set with plastic chairs and a glass top coffee table stacked high with magazines. I took a seat there and had been there for a minute or so when a couple came in and filled 2 of the unoccupied chairs, and the first thing that I noticed was that they were fully dressed. "Bonjour," I said, and it occurred to me that possibly the nurse had mentioned something about a robe. Like the one that was hanging up in the dressing room. I wanted more than anything to go get it back, but if I did, the couple would see my mistake. They'd think I was stupid, so to prove them wrong, I decided to remain where I was and pretend that everything was normal. It's funny, the things that run through your mind when you're sitting in your underpants in front of strangers. Suicide comes up, but just as you embrace that as a viable option, you remember that you don't have the proper tools. No belt to wrap around your neck, and no pin to drive through your nose or in your ear and up to your brain. I thought briefly about swallowing my watch, but really there was no guarantee I'd choke on it. It's embarrassing, I know, but given the way I normally eat, it would probably go down fairly easily, strap and all. It was around this time when 2 more people entered. The woman looked to be in her mid-50s and accompanied by an elderly man, and if anything, he was overdressed. A suit, a sweater, a scarf, and an overcoat. I thought to him, "Over here, give it to me," but he was deaf to my telepathy, and he handed his coat to the woman. Our eyes met for a moment, and hers widening as they went from my face to my chest. True, I had no clothes on, but maybe she wouldn't dwell on that. Maybe none of these people would. I mean, it sometimes helps to remind myself that not everyone is like me. Not everyone writes things down in a diary and then transcribes them into a notebook, and then fewer still will take that diary and notebook and clean it up a bit and read it in front of an audience. March 15th, Paris. Went with Dad to hospital, where we sat across this man and his underpants. They were briefs, not boxers, a little on the gray side. I later said to Father, other people too have to use those chairs too, you know, and he agreed. It was all too unsanitary. Odd. Little guy, creepy, hair on his shoulders, big idiot smile plastered all over his face, just sitting there mumbling to himself. How conceited I am to think that I am to be remembered in a busy hospital where human misery is a matter of course. If any of these people did keep a diary, their day's entry would likely have to do with diagnosis or some piece of news, either inconvenient or life-threatening. The liver is not a match. The cancer has indeed spread to the spinal column. Compared to that, a man in his underpants is no more remarkable than a dust-covered plant or the magazine subscription on the side near the floor near the table. Then, too, good or bad, these people would eventually leave the hospital and return to the streets, where any number of things could wipe me from their memory. Perhaps on their way home they'll see a dog with a wooden leg. Everyone has their own standards, but in my opinion, the sight like that is at least 50 times better than what I was providing. A man in his underpants is good for 2 days, a week at the most, unless you are that man, in which case they'll probably stay with you for the rest of your life. And how often you'll think of those cold plastic chairs and the nurse's face as she passes the room and discovers you with your hands between your knees. Such surprise, such amusement. And just as she proposes some new adventure, and then stands there waiting for you to say, the core.
That once again was wonderful. Our next performer for the night is going to be Johanna Quigley, performing her prose.
Here in the suburbs of North Carolina, when you looked out the window, you saw other houses and people inside those houses. But for the most part, our neighbors just sat in their living rooms watching TV. The only place that seemed truly different was owned by a man named Mr. Tom Key, who did not believe in television. To say that you did not believe in television was very different from saying that you did not care for it. Believe implied that television had a master plan and that you were against it. Word spread that Mr. Tom Key did not own television, and you began hearing that while this is all very well and good, it's unfair of him to inflict his beliefs upon his poor, innocent wife and children. It was speculated that just as the blind man develops a keener sense of hearing, the family must somehow compensate for their loss. I wanted to know what that something was, so I began peering through the Tom Key's windows, investigating. Perhaps the greatest flaw among mankind is man's desire to judge others based upon their differences. People of all ages, even children, will judge others for the smallest and most materialistic of reasons, and will go to some pretty great lengths to defend those judgments. This is Us and Them by David Sedaris. When fall arrived and school began, I saw the Tom Key children marching up the hill with paper sacks in their hands. We never spoke, but I'd pass them in the halls from time to time and attempt to view the world through their eyes. They had no idea how puny their lives were. What must it be like to be so ignorant and alone? Could a normal person even imagine? It occurred to me that they would need a guide, someone who could accompany them through the course of an average day and point out all of the little things that they were unable to understand. I could have done it, but friendship would have taken away from their mystery and interfered with the good feeling that I got from pitying them, so I kept my distance. The night after Halloween, we were sitting around watching TV when the doorbell rang. Visitors were infrequent at our house, so my mother, sisters, and I ran downstairs in a group and opened the door to see the entire Tom Key family standing on our front stoop. The parents looked as they'd always had, but the kids were wearing costumes. So we're, trick-or-treating now, I guess, said Mr. Tom Key. I attributed their behavior to the fact that they didn't have a TV, but television didn't teach you everything. Asking for candy on Halloween was called trick-or-treating, but asking for candy on November 1st was called begging, and it makes people uncomfortable. This was one of the things that we were supposed to learn by simply being alive, and it angered me that the Tomkeys did not seem to understand this. Why, of course it's not too late, my mother said. Kids, why don't you run and get the candy? You mean our candy? The candy that we earned? This was exactly what my mother was talking about, but she didn't want to go and say this in front of the Tomkeys. Go on now. Hurry up. I went into my room and I shut the door. And then I emptied my bag onto my bed and I searched for whatever candy was the crummiest. All my life, chocolate had made me ill. I don't know if I'm allergic or what, but even the smallest amount gives me a blinding headache. The candy bars were poison, but they were brand name, so I put them in pile number 1, which would definitely not be going to the Tomkeys. I knew that it was just a matter of time before my mother came into my room and started collecting the candy herself, grabbing indiscriminately with no regards to my rating system. Had I been thinking straight, I would have put the valuables in my dresser, but panicked with the thought of her hand on my doorknob. I tore off all the wrappers on all the candy bars and I shoved them into my mouth, desperately, like it was part of a contest. It was hard to chew and fit more in at the same time. My mother told the Tomkeys that she needed to check on something, and then she opened the door and stuck her head inside my room. What the hell are you doing? But my mouth was too full to answer. I'll just be a minute. And then she closed the door and came closer to my bed. I had just started on a miniature box of Red Hots when she pried them from my hands. BB-sized pellets clattered onto the floor, and as I watched them with my eyes, I saw her snatch up a roll of Necco wafers. No. But instead of words, my mouth expelled chocolate. Chewed chocolate onto the sleeve of her sweater. She shook her arm and the mound of chocolate dropped like a horrible turd onto my bedspread. You should look at yourself. I mean, really. Look at yourself. Along with the Necco wafers, she took several Tootsie Pops and half a dozen caramels. I heard her apologize to the Tomkeys in her absence, and then I heard my candy hitting the bottom of their candy bags. For months, I had protected and watched over these people, but now, with one stupid act, they had turned my pity into something hard and ugly. The shift wasn't gradual, but immediate, and it provoked an uncomfortable feeling of loss. We hadn't been friends, the Tomkeys and I, but I'd still given them the gift of my curiosity. Wondering about the Tomkeys made me feel like I was generous, but now I would have to shift gears and find pleasure in hating them. The only alternative was to do as my mother had suggested and to take a good, hard look at myself. It was hard to shake the mental picture that was snapped by her suggestion. Here is a girl sitting in her bed, her mouth smeared with chocolate. She's a human being, but also she's a pig, surrounded by trash and gorging herself so that others may be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Our next performer is going
Miss
to be...
Reynolds! Miss Reynolds! Ella, you lied to me.
Johnny.
She's clearly here. I checked in her room. I checked in her three-bedroom apartment that's 3.6 miles away. I checked, near the northwestern corridor where her car's parked, her 2017 Scarlet Hyundai Serrano.
Johnny, is she even here?
Yes, she is. And you found her contact lens. Can't you see it? Clearly here.
Why don't you go
Wait.
off the stage?
What?
Off the stage.
Oh.
I-
But she's here.
Our next performer will be David Laudewasser, performing an informative speech.
Just like most stories in my life, this one sadly begins with me watching Netflix. In particular, the movie Geostorm. This 2017 film is all about how humans have learned to control the weather by using satellites. Some human-caused natural disasters ensue and basically destroy the Earth. This was a horrible movie and totally bombed at the box office. Nonetheless, its premise intrigued me. Human-caused natural disasters. I immediately started Googling this, and 2 cups of coffee later, I found myself in the deepest part of the search page. And that is where I found it. The perfect human-caused natural disaster. And to make timing better, this occurred 100 years ago, in 1919. What could I be referring to? Imagine walking down the streets of Boston. It's around noon on a chilly January day, and as you round the corner, you're immediately swept up in a giant tsunami. But this is no ordinary tsunami, of course, because this flood is entirely comprised of molasses. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919, also known as the Boston Molasses Flood, sounds like a pretty terrible movie idea. Nonetheless, everything about it is amazing. At first, I thought it would be more of a comedy, but the more I looked into it, the more I found that it is unmistakably tragic. To fully understand the magnitude of this event, we must begin by understanding what the molasses flood is, what caused it, and how it has affected safety in America. The Great Molasses Flood came out of nowhere. On January 15, 1919, a lone tank full of molasses burst open onto the north end of Boston. The tank had been there for years, and the public rarely ever noticed it. It lied next to apartment buildings, the local fire station, and many family-run businesses. Over 2.3 million gallons, or the equivalent of 3.5 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of this thick liquid poured out onto the streets, covering and destroying buildings, as well as trapping humans and animals alike. At this point, you may be thinking of the phrase slow as molasses. Yeah, that doesn't apply here. A 2002 professor at Harvard explains that the molasses would have been moving at an approximate rate of 40 miles per hour. In comparison, Don Sherwood of the American Automobile magazine explains that the only car available to the public at the time, being the Model T, could only run at a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour. The catch here was that it could only hold this speed for 10 seconds before the engine would completely die out. So not even cars during this time could outrun this sticky tsunami. The most unsettling part about this event is what happened once the molasses settled. Emily Sohn of History.com explains that as the chilly January air got to the molasses, it quickly cooled, condensed, and became a sort of molasses tomb. Anyone unfortunate enough to be stuck in it would not be able to move and would slowly suffocate. In the end, 21 people were found dead, the youngest of which being 10-year-old Pascal Ian Tosca. Ian Tosca was found crushed under a streetcar that was derailed due to the flood. Along with the dead, 158 were found injured, 80 of which would go on to die due to their injuries. After so much carnage, there was only one question still on Bostonians' mind: who or what was to blame? After the event, many theories began to pop up every which way as to who was to blame. The most popular of these theories was that a group of anarchists was responsible. This theory was entirely plausible, as in 1918 alone, there were 38 explosive incidents in Boston on the account of anarchist groups. After a 5-year trial, however, it was deemed to not be anarchist, but a much darker, much more idiotic culprit. Let's backtrack to 1915, when the tank was first made. This was during World War I, and while America had not yet joined the war, they were still a major supplier to the Allies. One of their major exports was molasses, as it was used in everything from munitions to the creation of industrial-strength alcohol for medical use. The Purity Distilling Company, the company that created the tanks, wanted to make as much money as possible. They began to set up tanks such as the one that would later explode all across the eastern seaboard. These tanks were made to hold 2.5 million gallons of molasses, but with steel walls only ranging from 0.3 to 0.7 inches in width, the tanks leaked from the very beginning. How would the company deal with this issue? They hired a team to paint the tanks the color of molasses so that the public wouldn't even notice. In later investigations, it was deemed that the entire workforce that worked on the tanks did not have a single engineer on staff, and many of the workers did not even know how to read blueprints. Now that we know that shoddy workmanship and corporate greed caused the molasses flood, let's get back to the trial to see what the punishment is. In the end, the Purity Distilling Company was given a $15 million fine for their actions. This may not seem like a lot considering they're responsible for the deaths of 101 people, along with millions of dollars of structural damage, but this was actually a monumental moment for the American government. This was during the Industrial Revolution, and during this time period, the free market society allowed large corporations to get away with basically whatever they wanted. Along with this fine, Congress passed the Engineers Act. This act made it so that all people working in the construction field must be licensed engineers and have papers to back it up. Along with this, any construction project in a large city must be approved by the city board and have a mark stating that it was made by licensed engineers. Although the molasses flood was a tragedy, it's nice to know that some good did come of it. Although a large tank of molasses bursting open onto the north end of Boston may not seem like it could hold any deeper meaning, it shows us a valuable truth. Humans can be just as dangerous as nature, especially if greed and power are the motives. While it may not compare to the world-ending events of Geostorm, I hope we all have an appreciation for the safety regulations that keep giant tanks of various liquids from exploding at any point. That and while molasses may be sweet, it sure can be deadly. I can't wait for that Netflix documentary to come. Thank you.
Miss Reynolds! Miss Reynolds! Still can't find Miss Reynolds.
Johnny, can you go? I'm so...
I haven't found Miss Reynolds!
Johnny, you're interrupting.
But Miss Reynolds,
She's somewhere.
somewhere, but where?
Our next performer of the night will be Katie Taylor, performing her 4th place oration at State.
College student Garrett Jers was one of many, gathered outside of the One Blood Donation Center in Orlando, Florida, just days following the fatal mass shooting at the gay nightclub Pulse. Jers, a gay man himself and familiar face to the whole scene, was horrified by what had occurred and wanted to do all that he could to help. However, the young man was quickly shocked, confused, and devastated when he was informed that he was ineligible to donate blood, ironically and cruelly, because of his sexuality. 2019 started off with what the American Red Cross has deemed a critical emergency call for blood donations from the American public in response to a severe blood drought currently overtaking the country. However, despite America's ever-present need for blood donations, thousands of willing donors are unable to give blood each year, all because of the stipulation put into place by the American FDA in 1983. This regulation, enacted in the midst of the 1980s AIDS epidemic, barred any man who had ever had a sexual encounter with another man, or an MSM, from donating blood in his entire lifetime. 2015, this policy was actually revised from a lifelong ban to a year-long deferral for any blood donation after any sexual encounter for MSMs, often referred to as the year-long celibacy rule. But as said by many LGBTQ activists, this still isn't anything to be celebrating. It's felt by many today that the policy we see in place is a remnant of the rampant homophobia bred during the AIDS crisis, and actively prevents thousands of willing Americans from donating blood and saving lives each year. Americans like Garrett Jones, who, despite being in a monogamous relationship for 7 years and testing negative for HIV, was unable to help his community in its time of need. That's why today we'll first be examining the 1980s AIDS epidemic. Next, we'll take a look at the FDA's current policy in place regarding blood donation for gay and bisexual men. And finally, we'll examine a world with a solution. So, to start, with a topic such as this, a hefty bit of background is super important. America in the 1980s was characterized by a widespread fear to a rising but relatively unknown foe, autoimmune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS. According to HIV.gov, AIDS is essentially the most severe form of HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. At its core, HIV attacks the cells in your immune system that help the body fend off infections. And HIV is considered to have degraded into AIDS once the immune system has been so horribly damaged that it can no longer fend off increasingly severe infections and diseases, left untreated, potentially leading to death. Decades of research have shown that HIV is only transmittable through certain bodily fluids and is most commonly transmitted through sexual encounters and the usage of shared needles. Additionally, with today's modern-day technology and healthcare, we are well aware that an HIV-positive status is not a death sentence, nor is it indicative of a future AIDS-positive status. However, in the 1980s, little, if anything, was known about both HIV and AIDS, except that they were seemingly fatal and that they were rising at a rapid rate within the country. But according to Khan Academy, there seemed to be one other seemingly significant observation made by scientists during this time period. Up to this point in American history, it seemed that nearly every fatality in the United States caused by AIDS had been attributing a homosexual male. Now, it's important to keep in mind that gay and bisexual men have always made up the widest demographic of people affected by HIV and AIDS. But you also have to take into account the fact that hysteria was running rampant, and that the LGBTQ community was still widely stigmatized by the greater whole of society. As unfortunate as it is, gay and bisexual men became some of the scapegoats of the AIDS crisis. In fact, before it was AIDS, it was actually GRID, the gay-related immunodeficiency. Newspapers were plastered with headlines warning the public of the gay cancer and the gay plague. As unfortunate as it is, as scientists began to understand the link between bodily fluids and the transmission of HIV, it wasn't long until 1983, and the FDA made it official that any man who had ever had a sexual encounter with another man would be unable to donate blood in his entire lifetime. Moving to the modern day, however, the FDA maintains that its policies are based in behavior and not sexual orientation. As we've already examined, this policy was actually revised in 2015 from this lifelong ban to essentially the year-long celibacy rule for gay and bisexual men for blood donation. But once again, this still isn't good enough. For one thing, this policy is still severely outdated. In an article published in the LA Times in July 2018, physician Dr. Nicholas Quaino explains that research into both HIV and AIDS since the 1980s has significantly expanded our ability to treat and respond to it. Nowadays, with near perfect accuracy, you can be tested for HIV and receive the results back in, at most, 2 weeks. this also doesn't take into account the fact that every blood donation received in the United States is screened for bloodborne pathogens like HIV. Second, though perhaps statistically speaking, gay and bisexual men are perhaps those in the United States most likely to have HIV, in 2016, HIV.gov found that a mere 25% of HIV transmissions occurred between heterosexual couples. And this near 10,000 people is quite a significant amount to take into account. Finally, a gay man who has been in a monogamous relationship for an extended period of time, decades even, and may be married, and also tests negative for HIV, cannot currently legally donate blood so long as he is sexually active. And yet, a heterosexual man who has a variety of sexual partners each month without disclosing HIV positive or any STD status, and may already have STDs like herpes and chlamydia, all of which are indicative of high-risk behavior for HIV, can donate blood, no questions asked. What these statistics show is that this is a policy that is not only arbitrary and outdated, but simply put, has no place in our modern society. So now that we've examined the problems policy poses in the status quo, we can examine our solution for today, removing the deferral process altogether. Unfortunately, the United States is not the first, nor will it be the last country to undergo some sort of AIDS epidemic. But it is one of few who has ever or still has a ban or deferral process in place for MSMs. Countries like Argentina, Italy, Spain, Poland, and even Russia do not have deferral processes in place. Instead, many countries across the globe use an individualized sexual risk assessment for every blood donor they see, regardless of sexuality. In fact, in the early 2000s, medical epidemiologist and director of the National AIDS Unit of Rome, Italy, Dr. Barbara Sugoli, found that when Italy, who had endured their own AIDS epidemic, switched from a lifelong ban on MSMs to this individualized approach, there were no significant increases or even changes in the amount of HIV transmissions recorded from blood transfusion. The American Medical Association, the American Red Cross, America's Association of Blood Banks, and America's Blood Centers all support a science-based approach to America's current blood donation debacle. What's more, the University of California, Los Angeles proposes that if the year-long celibacy rule were to be revised, an additional 317,000 pints of life-saving blood can be donated each year. Now, all of that being said, it's confession time. I am not a policymaker, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that none of you are either. So what you can do right now to feasibly help solve this issue is exercise your own right to donate blood, which is pretty significant according to the American Red Cross, seeing as one blood donation is capable of saving up to 3 lives. So, in review, fighting for change and raising awareness around this issue is not only imperative for the state of our country, it's simply something that we owe to our fellow Americans. The LGBTQ community in the United States has endured trial after trial, whether it be the 2016 Pulse shooting or the 1980s AIDS epidemic. And it's policies like the one we've examined today that only perpetuate what they've had to endure since their start. What's more, with the situation as dire as America's blood shortage right now, this is a policy revision that could aid in saving hundreds of thousands of lives. Perhaps Mark King, who was diagnosed with HIV in 1985, puts it best, saying, "I understand the primitive fear that's been embedded into our conscience for the past 2 generations. But we do not deserve to be penalized as a people who care about the public health just as much as any
Our next performer for the evening is going to be the president of this forensics team, Joseph Corridor, performing an informative speech.
In 2019. Whoa. I think you're the guy I've been looking for. Corridor, I hear you've been doing informative. Wait, no, inform me of Miss Rail's location. In 2018, the movie to watch was Mission Impossible Fallout. In the film, Special Agent Ethan Hunt, played by actor Tom Cruise, leads his team against a rogue MI6 agent who is hell-bent on destroying the world. Like all great action movies, though, Hunt wins. But this isn't the first time that an American spy has defeated his British counterpart. To find that, one would need to go all the way back to 1776. That's right. During the American Revolution, the man, myth, and legend, George Washington, set up an ultra-secret spy organization known as the Culper Spy Ring. This spy ring was so secret that it took almost 150 years for the American public to ever find out about it. So today, we will first uncover the members of this spy ring. Then, we will examine their methods and impact on the Revolutionary War, and finally, we will explore what this ring looks like today. In 1776, the Continental Army had a major problem. They could not get any information outside of New York City, the British's headquarters in the colonies. According to the American Battlefield Trust, George Washington's first attempt at spying in the city ended with the lines, "I regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." These words, spoken by American spy Nathan Hale, convinced Washington that traditional espionage could not succeed, at least not in this war. So instead, he enlisted the help of a farmer, whaleboater, cavalry officer, and tavern keeper, all of whom grew up together in the small coastal town of Setauket, Long Island. The farmer, Abraham Woodhull, would travel from his home in Long Island to New York City, where he would obtain crucial information such as troop numbers and naval movements. He would then go back to Long Island, where a woman by the name of Abigail Strong would hang a black petticoat as a sign for the whaleboater, Caleb Brewster. Brewster would retrieve the information and sail back to the Continental Army's camp, where he would meet up with the cavalry officer, Benjamin Talmadge, who would then relay the information to Washington himself. Eventually, though, Woodhull found it difficult to relay information outside of the city, so he enlisted the help of a local tavern keeper by the name of Robert Townsend, whose tavern was a local favorite in New York City. Together, these spies would be crucial in bringing down one of the mightiest empires of the time and creating the nation that we know and love today. While the individuals of this ring were definitely special, they needed certain strategies, techniques, and methods to succeed. The first thing they needed? Code names. The core members of the ring, Abraham Woodhull and Robert Townsend, were given the code names Samuel Culper Sr. and Samuel Culper Jr., respectively. They were named after Culpeper County, Virginia, where Washington had practiced surveying before the war, thus the Culper Spy Ring. Their most famous technique, however, was the use of an ingenious codebook. According to the Mount Vernon Museum, Major Benjamin Talmadge devised a codebook in which a series of numbers represented certain words, consisting of 763 names, places, and actions. For example, 729 was New York City, 659 was Victory, and 711 was General Washington himself. This codebook was crucial not only in maintaining the secrecy of the messages, but also maintaining the secrecy of the identities of those delivering them. Like all great spies, though, this ring used invisible ink. In fact, they were on the forefront of this super spy technology. The ink used by the ring was actually developed by James Jay, the brother of founding father John Jay. The Samuel L. Clements Library reveals that the ink used by the ring was a mixture of ferrous sulfate and water, which could only be revealed through a chemical reagent, such as sodium carbonate, or over an open flame. Thus, letters would be marked with an A or an F to signal whether acid or flame should be used to reveal the message. It is also speculated that this spy ring used primitive polygraphs, transported messages inside of hard-boiled eggs, and even used early submarines, which they called turtles, although none of this has ever been confirmed. But how much did all of this sneaking around actually accomplish? Well, quite a bit, actually. According to John A. Nagy, a scholar and author at St. Francis University, this ring might have actually won the war for America. Their most famous accomplishment was uncovering a British plot to ambush the very first French army to land in the colonies. Had the British succeeded, they could have wiped out the entire French army and the French-American alliance along with it. And as we know, without the help from the French, there was a very small chance that the colonists could have won their war for independence. These spies were also the ones who exposed notorious traitor Benedict Arnold, a general who defected to the British. By doing so, they were also able to capture the British head of intelligence, which greatly decreased the effectiveness of British spies. And finally, this spy ring was able to learn about and thwart a British plan to flood the colonial market with counterfeit money in an attempt to cripple the new nation's economy. If any one of these British plans had succeeded, they could have quickly crushed the American rebellion. Yet, here we stand today, thanks to the Culper spy ring. Unfortunately, it seems that the coolest parts of history never last, and the Culper spy ring is no different. While many still speculate that this ring is still alive and well today, only with new members, obviously, this is only hearsay, and there is no hard evidence. However, it is important to realize that even though this spy ring does not still exist today, their legacy does live on. Techniques used by the Culper spy ring, such as dead drops, encryptions, and hidden compartments, are still widely used today. In addition to their methods, these spies change the very way in which modern intelligence agencies view espionage. In reference to the Culper spy ring, the CIA states, "The practice of American intelligence is readily traceable back to the earliest days of our nation's existence. The Founding Fathers recognized that intelligence is a vital element of national defense and understood the importance of secrecy when conducting successful intelligence operations." So, even if the Culper spy ring is not still around today, not only did they help give us our independence, but they also created the foundation upon which modern intelligence is built. Today, we learned about the Culper spy ring, their members, their methods and impact on the war, and what they look like today. But hopefully we've learned more than just about some Revolutionary War spies and their impact on our independence, but also about the importance of details in history. Literally, some cabbage farmer with some ferrous sulfate and a code book was able to change the entire course of history. And while the Culper spy rings may be no match to the modern Ethan Hunts, they might just be the reason that today's missions are all possible. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Our next performer of the night to finish us off will be Johanna Quigley, performing her second place humorous interpretation at State.
Whoa, 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 H.I., this is no laughing matter. Mother Goose is out of the nest. I repeat, Mother Goose is out of the nest. This is a crisis.
I think we need to make a permanent solution to this problem.
What? No! No! Ah! Fun-size Dorito, save yourself!
Once again, to finish us off, will be Johanna Quigley, performing her humorous interpretation, second at state and national qualifier.
Breaking news! We here at the Presley High School Intelligencer have secured an exclusive first look into the locker of student body president, Christy Martin. I'm literally trembling. I'm seeing President Christie approach her locker just now. This is the moment that we have been waiting for an hour. 6 hours of live coverage. This is Olivia St. John with the Presley High School Intelligencer. We are so excited to have the opportunity to see your locker today. Any words, President Christie?
Oh, I just want everyone to know that I value each and every one of you, even if you are not smart. In this glorious scholars, it's important to remember that I am right about everything. Are you guys ready?
This is the moment I am seeing books and folders and a coat and a stylish, and I'm seeing some photos of a mansion. What's up, babes?
Everyone, this is my new boyfriend, Joseph. And because I'm the president, that makes him the new first boyfriend.
Breaking news within breaking news. This is like the landing at D-Day. Please tell me, are you two in love? Preston High School football rules.
I think what he meant to say is that we're just totally giddy right now. Okay, I think my interview is done.
Giddy. Our president is giddy. We are living in glorious times. This has been Olivia St. John with the Presley High School Intelligencer, where we give you these amazing, amazing stories. Signing off. In a nation where its inhabitants are obsessed with 24-hour news coverage, we as Americans can very easily understand the situation that high school newscaster Olivia St. John has been placed in the midst of. As conspiracies arise about student body president Christy Martin, Olivia makes it her mission to find out the real news about the conspiracies, and manages to uncover far more than she may have bargained for. This is Breaking the News by Dawn Salinas. Great job on the boyfriend expose, Olivia! Thanks, Luke. I was actually wondering, do you think we could do some real investigative news? It seems like all we ever do is talk about how great President Christie is, which she is great. It's just, what if we expanded our coverage? Like, actually found out stuff. I catch your drift. Here's a pitch. Yoga pants. Are they actually pants? Have people been walking around without pants on? No, that is hard. I want to talk about real news. I want to dig into the school's finances. I want to see if Christie's budget cuts have been working. I want to see if test scores have been going up. Real news. Yoga pants is real news. But that's not serious. Listen here. If you want to go sound smart, you can go do so somewhere else, because smart is the one thing that we do not do at the Presley High School Intelligencer. So I suggest you have your yoga pants expose in by Friday. Got it? Got it. This is Olivia St. John with the Presley High School Intelligencer, reporting on the hard-hitting topic of the function of yoga pants. I'm reporting on this topic because I have no self-esteem, which apparently you can't have if you want to be a journalist.
Hello there, Olivia.
Who are you?
I am a shadowy figure. I'm here to give you all the information that you'll need for your hard-hitting investigation. Here it is.
What is this?
It's a manila folder.
I know, but what's inside the manila folder?
Oh, 2 sets of books. One of which is the amount of money that the school raised on our last fundraiser, and the other is the amount of money that the school actually received.
Okay. We raised $1.2 million on bobbleheads?
They were seriously awesome.
But the school only received $53,000. Why is that?
I think you know. Follow the money. Find the truth.
This is Olivia St. John with the Presley High School Intelligencer, shocking revelations about missing funding, and I am going straight to the top. The principal...
You wanted to see me?
Or the principal's assistant. Hi there, Maya. I'm here to ask Principal Weems a couple of questions, if that's okay.
You wait an appointment? Okay, I'll let you in. Principal Weems, the press is here, and they know everything. Go on in.
Oh, Olivia, so nice to see you. I just love all the work that you do with your little AV club.
Thanks, Principal Weems. I'm here to ask you a couple of questions, if that's okay. Would you happen to know anything about our school's bobblehead fundraiser? Caught your attention, didn't I?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think you do. I have enough information to put you away for a very long time, you sick loser. I know all about the bobbleheads, so what happened to the money?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I just love bobbleheads so much, but I didn't have any cash with me, so I just took one. I swear, I'll pay the $9.95 back as soon as I can. Please don't tell my family. My son, he looks up to me. He says, Dad, I don't care that Mom says not to respect you. I respect you. And that means so much. Just please don't run the story.
You only stole one bobblehead?
I'm a monster.
Okay. I think our interview is finished for today. Do you happen to have any idea who ran our school's bobblehead fundraiser?
I don't know anything. I'm just the principal. If I were you, I'd just go talk to the most powerful organization in the school. The Parent-Teacher Association. They'll know more than I do.
You were a great help, Principal Weems. This is Olivia St. John with the Presley High School Intelligencer. The trail has led to the most powerful organization in the school, the Parent-Teacher Association. Are they corrupt? Have they been skimming from the top of the profits? Olivia St. John investigates. Oh, you must be Betty Lewis, the head of the PTA. I'm here to ask you a couple of questions.
Well, sure. Now, before we do our little investigation, I must warn you that as the head of the PTA, that I'm always consistently, continuously multitasking. So when you're asking me your cute little questions, I'm just gonna be practicing my rumba. It's all in the hips.
Okay, would you happen to know anything about our school's bobblehead fundraiser?
Oh, bobbleheads! I just love them, don't you? The way that their little heads go back and forth. Do you want to see my impression of a bobblehead?
I'm well aware of the function of a bobblehead.
Then why did you ask about them?
I'm asking about the money, Mrs. Lewis.
Oh, the money. Yes, the money.
Listen here, Mrs. Lewis. I have enough information to put you and all of your mothers away for a very long time. You'll be in the maximum security prison upstate, wearing matching orange jumpsuits and breaking rocks. And I'll have videotaped the whole thing. It'll go viral and everyone will know the name, Betty Lewis. And that's just me getting started.
Well, listen here, little girl. I think you must have forgotten that as the head of the PTA, that I had to break a couple of skulls to get here. So I can have a dozen me mothers in here in a jiff to get you out of here if you so cross me.
Well, I brought all of my news reporters with me, and all of your mothers are outside getting interviewed with them, so it's just you and me, Mrs. Lewis. Off the record.
What do you want from me?
I want you to admit that you're the person that's been stealing money from our school.
Well, you don't have any proof. And even if you did have proof, no one would ever believe you.
It all started with the rumba lessons, didn't it? But you wanted more, so you began to take more, and then President Christie found out, didn't she? And She threatened to turn you in, so you funneled some of the money to her to keep her quiet. And that's how she has the expensive coat in her locker, her mansion. That's how she drinks all those weird kale smoothies with her white friends. And you keep Principal Weems in the dark. And that's how you're able to steal as much money as you do. Am I correct?
Well, that's certainly the situation that I've found myself in the past couple of years, so I guess you're right.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. I have recorded your entire confession, and I am now sending it to the police, who are waiting outside. Thank you, and goodbye, Mrs. Lewis.
Oh, the police! I can't go back to the big house!
According to the Constitution of Pressley High School, I hereby sentence you, Betty Lewis, to 5 days of ISS.
5 days of in-school suspension for stealing $1 million.
You must remember, I am just the principal. Therefore, I have no power here.
Oh, President Christie, any words about this whole situation?
It has taken me the past couple of days to realize how important my presidency truly is to the students at this school. But I promise, from this day forward, to never, ever, ever abuse my presidency ever again. Oops.
Thank you.
Ellen. Ellen.
Yeah?
Ellen, you've got to stop the shift. Ellen. I've been looking all around the school. I can't find Johnny anywhere. Ella. Ella. We've got to go find Johnny. Johnny! Johnny! Johnny!
So good.